This, of course, is the Nissan Leaf. Now, you probably know what this car is because it's been around a number of years. And Nissan keeps improving it. This latest version will go over, well, about 107 miles on a charge, but that still isn't enough to compete with the traditional internal combustion engine. What is enough? Well, recently I had a chance to talk to Anton Waldman, who knows, well, about as much about electric cars as anybody in our business. So coming up right now, a discussion about where the future of cars is heading. Hey guys, welcome to the Miami Auto Show, and I've got a man who needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce you anyway. It's Anton Waldman, and Anton is a reporter, a columnist, and somebody who knows about as much as there is to know about electric cars.
Something like that.
So welcome, Anton, and thanks for joining us for just a quick chat about where our future is going. So let's start with the basic question. We've got the Nissan Leaf over there, and that's the first generation of electric car. Soon there'll be a second generation. Where is it going? What's the difference between the first gen Leaf and the second gen Leaf?
So the first gen Leaf, which was introduced in 2010 as a 2011 model, had a limited range. It was rated by the EPA at 73 miles. They updated it almost a year ago to a model that has 107 miles of range, which is a meaningful difference because the incremental value of that is all on the margin. So that is as a step toward the all-new Leaf, which is expected in the market in probably about a year, or maybe slightly above a year from now. So that model is expected to have over 200 miles of range. So that is in terms of the product itself. In terms of the equation of whether consumer is going to buy them or not will be largely dependent on legislation and on the degree to which manufacturers are forced to make and sell any given number of them.
You know, obviously Tesla has been kind of the leader in this field, and the reason is, I think, because they have a car that does more than 70 or 80 miles. I remember when the Leaf first came out, Nissan was like, you know, the average person only drives 50 miles a day at most, so it's enough to give them 70 miles of range. But it isn't enough, right? You just run out of power, you feel like you're going to get stranded somewhere, and so I think one of the things that's been holding electric cars back in a lot of ways is the fact that the range hasn't been there.
Yeah, range is one part of the equation, because just imagine that you're on your way to work in the morning, or you're on your way back home from work in the evening, and you say, oh my God, I just forgot my keys. I got to go back. Or I just got a call, I got to pick up my son or daughter for ice hockey or whatever it is that they're playing. So if the unscheduled, the unforeseen makes life with a short range tough. But it's more than just a short range, because the other dimension is refueling and refueling time. So, you know, you never ask if a gasoline car has only 100 miles of range or 200 or 300 or 400 miles of range. You never ask that question. Why? Because you can fuel up in literally less than 3 minutes at almost any street corner in America in almost instantaneously. So there will be a day when you can refuel an electric car far faster than you can today, and you can do it almost everywhere, so you don't think about, oh, where do I need to go? So arguably, once we get to some amount of range, you can say that it's 200 miles, maybe it's 300 miles, where incremental range really doesn't matter as much as location of refueling, recharging, and how fast it takes to recharge at that point.
Yeah, and I think the early adapters have bought their cars, right? So if you are into electricity, you've probably bought a Leaf or you've purchased a Tesla. And now the question is, can they roll these vehicles out to the general public? And with that, there's a whole new battle coming, right? Because the Leaf is going to have 200 miles. Obviously, the first one to enter that fray is going to be GM with the new Bolt. And then Tesla at some point is going to roll out the Model 3. I mean, they've already introduced it, but what I mean by roll out...
Everyone will have. I mean, I can't think of a single automaker, with some one or two minor exceptions, that won't have at least one offering in the space within the next 3 years.
Yeah, Mercedes just committed to an electric future. Volkswagen has certainly doubled down on electricity.
They all are.
Yeah.
Jaguar, Volvo, Ford, Kia, Hyundai, Honda. You go down the list, they're all going to be there.
So let's talk about the three that are definitely coming, the Leaf, the Bolt, at least coming within the next
year.
Let's say year, yeah. And well, maybe the Model 3.
Year and a half. Yeah. Year and a half.
Yeah, which one do you think is going to be the winner in that horse race?
Well, I mean, you have to look at the timeline, right? So the Bolt will enter California dealerships in the month of December of this year, and probably will be in the rest of the country within a handful of months thereafter. So they will have the time to market advantage. Tesla Model 3 has been promised at some point during the second half of 2017. We'll see to what extent. I mean, they first have to build an assembly line, and then procure the product, test the product.
Yeah, rolling out one car isn't.
That's right. So we'll see. I mean, look, the car looks great. Yeah. I think the Tesla Model 3 looks like a beautiful piece of equipment. It seems eminently rational. When can it be brought to market, and can Tesla sell it at a profit? And then we, of course, have the second generation all-new Nissan Leaf, which Nissan hasn't said, as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I know, peep about, other than the fact that we expect it to have 200 miles of range or slightly more. Basically same as the Chevy Volt. The Chevy Bolt, sorry, the Bolt, not the Volt. The Bolt will have over 200 miles of range, and so will presumably the Nissan Leaf 2.0. Most people seem to think that it will arrive at some point during the second half of next year, 2017.
Now the buzz, at least what I'm hearing, is that in Europe this year in Paris, Volkswagen is going to roll out their electric car. Tell me about that. Have you heard anything?
That's right. So Volkswagen is going to show the second iteration of their all-electric platform. The first one they showed at CES this year in the minivan format. The Bully, whatever. Yeah, it's a hippie. It's a modern version of the hippie bus, right? Yeah. So beautiful. I loved it. But basically, what they're going to show at Paris in just a few short weeks from now is essentially a think of it like a Volkswagen Golf version thereof. So it'll be a couple of inches longer, a couple of inches taller than the Golf, but fundamentally the same concept as a Golf. And it will be larger in terms of the interior space than a current Golf. And that model is scheduled to go into production in the calendar year 2019 as a 2020 model.
Do you think this race to build and sell electric cars is being driven by the manufacturer, the consumer, or federal agencies who are giving serious let's say incentives in the form of tax incentives for companies to do this? Which of those three, or is it all three?
Well, the primary driver in terms of forcing the larger volumes of this right now are various flavors of government mandates. Yeah. The market for electric cars would not be zero otherwise. I think all manufacturers would have a finger in this because simply technology warrants that. But in terms of pushing it to sort of come up with factories that are going to produce hundreds of thousands of vehicles within a year or two, that is driven by government. People quickly forget, but back in 2010, when the first Nissan Leaf was scheduled for production, the CEO Carlos Ghosn went out there and said that it would not be enough to scale production to 500,000 cars per year by something like 2013. Well, now it's 2016, and they're nowhere near 500,000 cars a year. They're a round number, almost at 100,000 cars a year if you count Nissan plus Renault.
That's worldwide.
That's worldwide, and then Nissan plus Renault. It's roughly ballpark numbers about 100,000 between those two brands and the various 4 different models that they have on offer. So those were the projections back then, and they simply didn't come to pass. So. But I think people realize that the technology situation warrants some significant experimentation, some interesting models, there's no doubt. But when you have government mandates that say that you have to sell so and so many, whether it be in California or whether you have large cities such as Paris, Beijing, and London, mandating that only some flavor of EVs can be driven in those cities after 2018, 2020, or whatever it may be, then automakers, I mean, you saw from Bentley, for example, just a couple of days ago, they said that the next generation Bentley Mulsanne is going to be all electric. Yeah. I mean, that's a $450,000 car. They sell these things to rich people in London and Beijing, basically. Not so much in Paris, but London and Beijing for sure. And, well, it'll be all electric, not because there's an inherent consumer demand today, but if the government says, look, you can't drive in the fanciest part of London or the fanciest part of Beijing if it's not all electric, well, what do you have to do? If you're Bentley, you have to make it all electric.
Yeah, and do you see that this is being driven by China to a large extent because of all the pollution problems that they have right now?
Well, there are two separate things going on in China. On the one hand, you have specific city requirements, Beijing and Shanghai, for example. On the other hand, you have these larger society-wide mandates to get pollution down. So, you know, those two work in tandem to some degree, but definitely China is on the move in terms of forcing these things.
So, let me ask you this. First of all, how long before the electric car will become as, I shouldn't say dominant, but certainly equal to the internal combustion engine? 10 years, 20 years, or will it happen sooner?
I think 10 years is not far off.
Really?
I think 2024, 2023 is not a bad number. I mean, obviously, the embedded base is going to take much longer than that. And in terms of, I mean, you cannot ramp up production as quickly to get to 50% of the market by 2023. But in terms of where you see the point that the trajectory is there for what the concrete plans in terms of building factories and so forth are in place, I think not certainly, but I think that it's a high likelihood that by about 2023 we'll be on a pathway to hit 50% within a few short years thereafter. In other words, it'll be absolutely clear to everybody, I think, that by about that time frame we're going to get to that point.
And if you had to bet, what manufacturer do you think has the winning card right now?
I don't think anyone has a winning card in the sense that this is, it's almost like saying, well, which manufacturer has the winning card when it comes to infotainment units? Well, the answer is all automakers, with some 2 or 3 minor exceptions, are going with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. And they get those from suppliers, namely Google and Apple, who, all, by the way, are also getting into the auto business, right? So, when it comes to electric motors and batteries, they'll be buying batteries from Samsung, LG, Panasonic, and some other players. They'll be buying electric motors from guys like Bosch or Siemens, or they will manufacture and design it themselves. Or LG. I mean, LG is a significant supplier. They make the electric motor and all sorts of other components for the Chevy Bolt that is now hitting dealerships in a couple of months. So they'll be getting it from suppliers. And the economics in the auto business is very brutal. It's manufacturing economics, manufacturing efficiencies. And I don't think those will change in a meaningful way once you just swap out the type of engine and fueling system in the car. So I think less will change as opposed to more.
I think what's been holding back electric cars, obviously, is battery technology. And that isn't changing as rapidly as the automobile itself. And that's why, Nissan's only sold 100,000 of these, right? Because technology just still isn't there, especially if you live someplace where it's cold, right? It's great if you're in Arizona. It's not
Correct.
So great if you're in Colorado, where I live.
And that will determine much of the mix, right? I mean, if you are in the right climate and have the right type of driving habits, electric is far more feasible for you. But if you're living in Montana and you're used to driving a pickup truck, I mean, you're going to be one of the last adopters of this. This won't take 10 years, it'll take 20 years from now. So clearly there's a gray scale. And an electric car is not right equally for all people at all times. It'll hit certain people before others. If you're working in Silicon Valley, you're the prototypical guy who works at Google. You've got 1,000 or so chargers on campus, so you're charged for free during the day. You live 6 miles away. You don't drive in a whole lot of other places. So you drive your car 6 miles, you might go to the grocery store, might take your kid to whatever school or practice or something, and you're driving 30 miles a day. I mean, and the climate is always 72 degrees and perfect. Well, the answer is that an electric car for you is probably perfect right now today.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait 3 years, let alone 5 or 10.
Plus, it's a status symbol.
Well,
in Silicon Valley.
In Silicon Valley, no, it's way beyond that now.
Yeah.
I mean, when electric cars have hit mainstream is when you just call it a car.
Yeah.
And I think in a place like Silicon Valley, that's where we have already arrived at this point. An electric car is just a car. It certainly isn't that way in many other parts of the country and the world, but it's getting there selectively in some places. Holland, Norway, Atlanta. I mean, where did Nissan sell most of its cars in 2013 and 2014? It wasn't just California, it was Atlanta, because they gave them a $5,000 cash incentive. And suddenly when that thing was yanked on July 1st, 2015, sales went to near zero.
Yep.
So clearly incentives will continue to play an enormous part of the equation.
And you think there'll be, right now there's an infrastructure to basically disassemble the car after its lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
But now you're putting all these toxic batteries, in essence, into, and you're doing it in very vast numbers, right? Not 100,000 cars, you're talking millions of cars.
You're going to have to do that, yes.
Yeah, so will there be an infrastructure to disassemble this messed up?
That's right. I mean, that's been in the works, I would say, ever since the first Nissan Leaf and the Chevy Volt launched, and that is that they're looking at ways to you get second lives for these batteries, to use them for stationary storage applications in businesses or in homes to serve as backup power.
Yeah.
So that is being actively worked on by all of these parties, no doubt. And whether it's Tesla, whether it's GM, whether it's Nissan, and all the others, they're all working on just that.
And then last question, recently we've had Samsung phones. I just got on the plane and they wouldn't let me well, I don't have one, but they let us know that if you have a Samsung, because of the manufacturing
That's
process.
right.
you think that that's going to happen with cars? Is there going to be a moment where, Tesla had a little scare where
Yeah.
batteries were being punctured and cars started?
You know,
it's a lot of power you're storing in a little bit of space.
Never say never, but I think broadly speaking, the answer is probably no. I mean, we've seen so far anyway, very few instances from all the manufacturers of this happening. There is the random case, Tesla had 2 or 3 or whatever it was, or another 1 or 2 in the last month.
Got punched from underneath.
That's right, but if you look at the overall statistics for that, it does not reach the point where those are main concerns. There are other concerns about future technologies in cars, from autonomous and other topics that are, I think, going to prove far more perilous to adoption than I think just the battery technology and fires and so forth. I mean, the batteries largely don't explode. You can end up what we call a fast fire, whereby they burn really fast and it looks really nasty afterwards, but they're not inherently more dangerous than carrying around a 15-gallon worth of gasoline.
Yeah, and I think we forget when you drive down the highway how often you actually see car fires with traditional internal combustion engines, right?
Yeah.
I mean, cars catch fire.
I think it gets a lot of attention today. I don't think that'll be the long pole in the tent when this is all said and done. I think that in terms of safety and so forth, I think there are far bigger issues when we get to things like autonomous and remotely controlled vehicles that pose far bigger questions for society overall, and in terms of how human psychology is going to react to them.
And I think also people will get used to them, right? Right now, the idea of having a car and being stranded is scary. But when there are more charging stations and when you figure out actually how far you can go, then
it's really all about infrastructure. I think that there's still a market even for short range, meaning 70 or 100 mile electric cars in certain situations. By far the most important thing here is all about infrastructure. Clearly Tesla has done the most interesting work here, but I think that if you look at the Volkswagen settlement, with the EPA and the California Air Resources Board and so forth, they're going to invest up to $800 million over 10 years in the state of California alone, and up to $1.2 billion in the other 49 states over a 10-year period. This construction will presumably start within the next year or two, and all the other automakers are going to chip in to varying degrees. So there is going to be a significant network that is going to be built, and it's starting soon. And I think right now it's sort of hard to see what's right in front of us. When Tesla started delivering their first cars in the middle of 2012, we forget very easily, but there was no talk about a supercharging network then. They sold the first few thousand cars without any hopes for any network. Suddenly, a few months after they launched, it's, we have these superchargers here. You can drive from LA to San Francisco, you can drive to Vegas, you can drive to wherever. That will happen with everybody else, and it will happen soon.
So, Anton, if people want to read your stuff, where will they go?
I publish primarily on a site called Seeking Alpha, where I have all the disclosures about stock holdings and everything else that may impact somebody's judgment about what it is that I write about. And I write to a lesser degree also on a website called thestreet.com.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking your time.
As always, Roman,
and
good talking to you.
We'll be driving electric cars in 10 years. I'm excited.
Oh, less than that.
Or terrified.
I think within 3 to 4 months there'll be some interesting stuff hitting the market.
Whether you like it or not, this will probably be in your garage, right? Maybe not this Leaf, but a version of this by any of the major manufacturers in the next 10 years. And I think that's exciting because electric cars offer not only clean mobility, but also instant acceleration. And that's the part that I really like because, let's face it, speed is all about torque, and electric cars have it in spades. As always, this is Roman reporting for the Fast Lane Car. Check out tflcar.com for more news, views, and of course, real-world reviews. See you guys next time. Thanks. Hey guys, welcome to Miami, where Nissan just rolled out the 2017 Rogue, and behind us is a brand new Rogue. It's the hybrid, and this is Ty Webb. This is your baby, right, Ty?
Yep,
He's with
my
Nissan.
baby.
So walk me through it. Tell me about the styling.
Okay, all right, so we've completely redone the front end, as you can see here. So we have integrated LED daytime running lamps. We have LED headlamps. We've redesigned